to read a story made by Ruskin Bond, all-time favorites for children, that was illustrated by Kashmira Sarode. A Storyteller's Life. I have been telling stories all my life, and that is a story in itself. In the old days, a storyteller made by a living by standing at the street corner and regaling children and grown-ups with a tale told from memory or invention. His listeners threw him a few coins and went their way. I do much the same thing, except I use a pen to tell my stories, and they get printed in books, and I go to a wider audience. A few coins come my way too, in the form of royalties from my publishers. Recently, a young girl, wrote me to a kind letter and enclosed a 100-rupee note, suggesting I use it to enjoy a couple of fresh samosas. This was sweet of her, but I don't do it again. Friend, I have yet to arrive at the street corner like the storyteller of old. Someone once asked me where I get the ideas for my stories. Well, if you like people and find them interesting, you won't run out of stories. If you like birds and animals and flowers and trees and you and the world around you, you won't run out of ideas. Stories and ideas are swirling around you. If you keep your eyes and ears open, many of my favorite stories are in this collection. I have added a few new ones written in recent months. I hope you will enjoy them. And while you are busy leafing through this book, dear reader, I will take off to the bazaar in search of a hot, fresh samosa. Goldfish don't bark. The nice thing about goldfish is that they don't bark. Granny, as she stood back from the goldfish to admire the pretty gold orange about in their silent glass in the enclosure, they don't make any noise at all, said her granddaughter Koki, who had joined her in her front of the tank. They don't bark like dogs. They don't bray like donkeys. They don't sing like birds. How do they talk to each other? They can communicate without talking, said Granny. Do you ever see them bump into each other? Humans do a lot of talking, even they keep bumping into each other. Granny had acquired the aquarium recently. Over a month, she had kept the dog, scruffy-looking terrier, but the dog would bark all day and all night. It barked at other dogs, it barked at squirrels, it barked at mice, but never chased them. It barked at shadows, it barked at doors when it creaked, it barked at autumn leaves falling from the chestnut trees. Granny couldn't stand so much barking, so she gave the dog to her sister, who lived on the other side of the hill. Her sister liked dogs that bark. Some people do. Granny preferred goldfish. What did Granny look like? Well, she looked like plump, wearing an old pair of spectacles, and she smelled nice, like freshly baked bread. And what did Cookie look like? She looked like sweetest, prettiest, everyone's sweetest, prettiest little sister. What more can I say? She had two homes in the one in the city with her parents and another here in the foothills with her grandmother. Those whose little cottage was in a forest of Himalayan oak and maple trees. Cookie spent as much time as she could with her grandmother over the summer holidays, the winter break, even on Holi or Duressa in India. Children get lots of on the windowsill. At night, moths flew into the front room, and sometimes the moths flew into the goldfish tank and drowned. Beetles kept blundering in through the open above the goldfish bowl. Every now and then, one would fall into the water and Cookie would have to fish it out. First, an elegant bamboo beetle, and next evening a clumsy bamboo beetle, followed by a stag floating, struggling, sinking until Cookie came to the rescue. Naturally, the goldfish were alive. Every now and then, one of those clumsy beetles would land in the tank and be unable to get out. The goldfish were used to stillness, silence, and calm water. The beetles were a terrible nuisance, and finally, Cookie had to keep the window closed towards evening when the lights came on. The goldfish looked grateful. Cookie put her face against the glass of the tank and put her favorite pink goldfish up to the glass. And for a time, they were nose to nose. It might have been trying to say something. Who knows? Then came a dog that didn't bark. Determined that Granny should keep a dog, her sister had sent a strange-looking hound, long and thin, very hangy. Bit did not sing, it didn't bark, but it would keep the jackals away. The dog stayed with them for 3 days without barking. When it spotted squirrels, it whined a little and tried to chase them. When it saw the cat, it growled and tried to look menacing, but didn't bark, not even at the postman. Then early one night, as the full moon came over the mountain, the dog raised his head and let out the most dreadful howl. And this set off all the dogs, jackals, wolves, and foxes in the forest. And they soon were all howling. Some howled at the moon, some howled at each other, and some howled because it seemed like the right thing to do. This just went for about 10 minutes and it stopped. Just as it suddenly as it started, the moon disappeared behind the cloud and fell silent. All the animals fell asleep. The goldfish didn't seem to mind at all. Granny, being kind-hearted, didn't send the dog away. If it's only the moon that bothers him, she said, we'll just keep the curtains drawn whenever the moon comes up. It was that simple, and the dog would always be a good companion to Granny in the days and months to come. It was time for Cookie to return to her home in the city. She couldn't take the goldfish with her, but not even her little favorite one. But she knew she would be back before long. Perhaps during the winter break. She said goodbye to the dog. She said goodbye to the cat. She said goodbye to the birds in the oak leaf, and she gave Granny a long, lingering, loving hug. Then she put her face to the glass of the goldfish and said goodbye to her pretty silent friends. But the limping goldfish, Cookie's favorite, glided up to the edge of the tank and pressed its face against the glass. Right against Cookie's gentle face. Only the glass separated them. Was it trying to say something? Was it saying goodbye? Who knows?